Open source is not about you. This sounds like a spicy take, and I'm very excited about it. The only people entitled to say how open source ought to work are the people who run projects, and the scope of their entitlement extends only to their own projects. Fair take. I think you can take exactly what he says, Rich here says, and extend it to education as well. I cannot tell you how often I will see people make these really dumb one-dimensional takes. Like, education should only be free. And it's just like, okay, so you want a bunch of people who spend hundreds upon hundreds of hours to write these nice courses using specific technologies, and you want them all to do it for free because you think it should be free. Why? How about you let that person decide? If they don't want it to be free, it doesn't have to be free. If they want it to be free, then it can be free. Right? Like, why are you making decisions for somebody else? Why does somebody else get to spend hundreds of hours and then bend to your whim? Right? How about no? I don't want to pay for stuff, says the guy that probably has a $3,000 MacBook M1, a $1,700 iPhone, $200 pair of earbuds, $300 pair of Facebook Ray-Ban glasses. Paying for stuff's bullshit. I can't ever possibly pay for this. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to dish out $30 to improve my life? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So much virtue is going on right now. The virtue is unstoppable. All right, just because someone open sources something does not imply they own the world or they owe the world a change in their status, focus, and effort, e.g., from an inventor to community manager. As a user of something open source, you are not thereby entitled to anything at all. You are not entitled to contribute. You are not entitled to features. You are not entitled to the attention of others. You are not entitled to having value attached to your complaints. You are not entitled for this explanation. You know what I feel like? I feel like we need Tej on here.
Hey, I'm TeejDB. I'm one of the core maintainers of NeoVim, and I also wrote Telescope. I've helped a lot with NeoVim and various other open source projects. And
Pleniary.
It's a lot of fun most of the time. Pleniary, indeed. Bash?
Hello. My name is Bash Bunny. I work at an open source company called Charm, which I will shill in the chat because they're amazing.
Please shill.
And their website is
You can
sick.
even shill via voice.
Yeah, so it's charm.sh, and we basically build terminal tooling for developers. So we build a bunch of Go libraries to make your life easy if you're doing like TUIs or making SSH accessible applications or doing like user auth management and stuff like that with SSH keys for your apps and things like that. So we build a lot. Everything is open source. And yeah, so I interact a lot with the open source community, and my job is I'm basically their head of developer relations, meaning that I'm helping both in maintaining the applications and with the basically community management. So I am working a lot with like all the open source people.
Yeah. Okay, that's quite a bit. So you both have had a fair share of issues and communication with the open source world. You're familiar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then, okay, so who is Rich, by the way? You're saying you know who Rich Hickey is and
Yeah,
why
so
it
Rich
would be
Hickey-
relevant to know this.
Yeah, he created Clojure, the programming language. That's-
Uncle Bob loves that one.
Yeah, that's achieved like a lot of commercial and open source success. And he's also like, if you haven't watched a lot of his talks online, you should watch them. There's a ton on YouTube, and he has lots of really great ideas about programming. Some of them are not as like mainstream or obvious maybe as like what people might expect. For example, I think Clojure basically is like never had a breaking change, more or less. Like think about that like from a language. You just like we just don't do those.
Okay.
That's really good.
JavaScript
So he
does
has
the
a
same
lot
thing.
of really awesome thoughts about it and really interesting and pushes you to think in lots of new ways. So I'm excited. I haven't for once I haven't pre-watched the article ahead of time, so I'm excited to see what Rich has to say. So basically, Rich has lots of thoughts about this and has also managed to make a very, very successful project. And like Nubank, this like the biggest bank in South America, uses Clojure. They've got like 1,200 Clojure devs or something like that, right? All this other so like it's very successful. There's not that many people who've had like more successful projects, you know, in a sense.
Yeah,
So
I would
very
agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Awesome. And for those that are watching this on YouTube, Bash will be joining us via radio. She's calling in from the
Yeah.
walkie-talkie. And so, all right, I'm just going to reread the previous sentence.
Over.
Yeah, over. We're so over. What was that? We're so what? It's my favorite. It's my favorite. All right. As a user, let's see, hold on. As a user of something open source, you are not hereby entitled to anything at all. You are not entitled to contribute. You are not entitled to features. You are not entitled to the attention of others. You are not entitled to having value attached to your complaints. You are not entitled to this explanation. Now, I think, Bash, you're probably in a more interesting situation because Charm also has a paid side with, I assume, with hosting, with various things with their SSH clients and all that. And so you kind of have like almost a partially entitled complaint. Is that fair to make?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I would say like because Charm is still kind of pre-revenue, like we haven't launched anything that is paid yet.
Oh.
But even still, I still would say that like we have a strong existing user base, and because it is a company that's attached to it, like there definitely is more there is definitely kind of this sense as a developer that I do owe the users something, right?
Okay.
It's not just like I'm volunteering my free time, like I'm getting paid to work on these things. So yeah, there definitely is a bit more pressure in that regard. And I would say that kind of reflects in how we try to respond to issues and things like that. I wouldn't agree with the last sentence in this paragraph of saying you're not entitled to this explanation. I definitely think that we always try and make sure that people are like, that we're communicating well with them and that they feel heard. It's an important part of, I think, community building and having people want to keep coming back to your projects because they're going to remember how you made them feel and how using the tools made them feel. And I think that, like how you're interacting with the community is a big part of that. But it can definitely be hard. And especially as a company that is open source, like there's things that are maybe on the roadmap or whatever that you can't share. So sometimes it does mean that their questions kind of get just left up in the air because you can't share that yet, You can't say why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think though, like Rich is saying you should, like, he's just saying you're not entitled to it as the person, right? Like you haven't entered into any arrangement or agreement or anything like with the people, right? Who, if you're like the maintainer, there's like a random person and they're just like yelling at you to explain why something isn't the way it is or whatever, right? They're not entitled to that. Now it might be like effective for you to still, like, for the goals that you might want to have for the project, to anyways respond nicely and like help them, right? But like I think the point, at least at the start, right, is about that. Like I said, I don't know where exactly he's going, but the being entitled to an explanation, like I agree. But obviously, if you want people to stay with your product and do these things, you might want to like answer them nicely and do those things anyways.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right, if you have expectation of others that aren't being met, those expectations are your own responsibility. You are responsible for your own needs. If you want things, make them. Fair take. It's a fair take in the open source world. If you want things, you can contribute. It's not like and if they refuse your contribution or do not like it, you can always fork and do your own thing. So it is open and free for you to try to figure things out.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree. I would also say that like sometimes there is a certain code standard that needs to be upheld, but if anything, at the very least, you'd be learning something. If you create an issue first, then they can kind of decide like, okay, does this align with like what we want to be within the scope of the project? And then given that, you can create a PR and ask to have it merged, and then they can give you feedback on that PR and, make sure it kind of keeps with the code standard that they currently have. But in some cases, like you're going to want a feature that is so niche that they don't want to maintain, because every time that you add a feature, it like increases the complexity exponentially. It's a lot more. It's not just about like a one and done. Now it's available through their API, and now you need to continue to make sure that works.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. I'm actually suffering with that with Harpoon. I've been wanting to rewrite it for like the last year, invert the entire project because I don't want to support terminals. I don't want to support all these things that people want. And I realized I made a mistake fundamentally because I went like the null ls route where you are the maintainer of all things. And then I just have learned to just say no to all things at this current point. Anyways, and I'm sure TJ, you were smart enough to build a Telescope with just more of the embedding of plugins kind of already pre-thought into it. So it just came out nicer.
Yeah, one of the things we did like at the very beginning that I did for it was like I knew there were going to be things people wanted to write things for and allow people to still like have those be discovered by users, right? And so writing like an extension endpoint where plugins can register themselves as like I do Telescope things was one of the things that I did like at the beginning, which is nice because then we can not maintain all of those because I don't want to.
Yeah. Smart.
Yeah.
All right. Open source is licensing and delivery mechanism, period. It means you get the source for software and the right to use and modify it. All social impositions associated with it, including the idea of community-driven development, are part of a recently invented mythology with little basis in how things actually work. A mythology that embodies cult-like both a lack of support for diversity in the ways things can work and a pervasive sense of communal entitlement.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I like this a lot. I mean, like I said, there are ways that you might want to think about doing your project where you still are like accepting of people being annoying, right? And like you try and maybe educate them or do stuff like that. But it's also like you only have a limited number of hours in the day. You only have so many contribution time. And sometimes you just have to close an issue and say, like, we're not going to work on this. And then like, that's it. Right? Or like you're just going to close a PR that's done and working with tests because you don't think it's the vision that you want to do. Or like maybe you're like SQLite and they just don't accept contributions basically from outside of their maintainers, right? Like that's a pretty successful open source project, I would say, you know? And not saying that like then there's other forks of SQLite and they're going to do things differently. And that's great. Like that's cool. Right? But the point is, I think that like you can have really successful projects that aren't doing this community driven development like idea that are still open source about people having like in the ability to read the source, to know what it is and to modify it for themselves, right? Which is like completely, I think that's the point of this article is like completely orthogonal, right? To this idea of like, you have to do it for the community or something like that.
Yeah. I also think that there's a way to hear the community and translate that into what they actually want. I think that a lot of times they'll ask for things and it's not what they're asking for is like kind of leading you towards what they really want, but they don't know exactly what they want. And so part of your job, and I think part of where you can get the value out of even having developer relations on the team, because that's a controversial topic in itself, is where you have somebody that can translate those requirements and say, okay, the community, here's what, like the trend of what we're seeing, and here's what they actually need from that.
Yeah. I see Rich Harris did a really good job with this. He talks a lot about this with Svelte, where he says that what people ask for and what they need are often like actually antagonistic to each other. And so he has to take all these different things people are saying, okay, what they're actually saying is they want this thing different. I'm going to fix this, which will subsequently fix their problems or at least change the surface area of their problem into something different. All right, let's see. If you think Cognitech, I assume that's the one that's building Clojure, is not doing anything for the community or is not listening to the community, you are simply wrong. You are not, however, entitled to it being the effort, focus, or response you desire. We get to make our own choices as regards to our time and lives. Just, I think
every paragraph afterwards, he just needs to have the Giga Chad like emote every time. It just, I'm just like, yeah, you tell them.
It's a fair take. They get to choose.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Exactly.
We at Cognitech have to show up to work every day to make a living. We get no royalties of any kind from Clojure. We are in no way building Clojure for profit. Far fewer than 1% of Clojure users are our consulting or product customers, and thus contributing to our livelihood. I mean, that's the pain of open source. I mean, trying to make money off open source just in general is it can be very emotional.
I think that even if you are showing up and it is part of your living, like people also need to understand that businesses have priorities. It's just not, it just doesn't make sense if they think that every single PR that they're making or every issue that they're raising is going to be like immediately at the top because it's important to them. It's like maybe if it's a bug fix or something like that, that'll probably get merged maybe faster or like might get more attention because it's something that needs, it needs to happen. It's not adding any additional support. But yeah, I don't know.
That's what you're saying. We take.
Yeah, I think there's just like some people in. I can't tell if they're asking why is Rich Hickey complaining. Rich Hickey isn't complaining. Rich Hickey is stating what you should expect in return for giving nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Like
he's laying down the expectations of what it's like to contribute or file issues for Clojure.
Right. So the title is open source isn't about you because lots of people come to a project, they see it's open source, say, oh, I'm the important one here.
Yeah.
Why? So solve my problem. Like I see that you made this. So solve my problem. Right. So when he lists like far fewer than 1% of Clojure users are paying us, he's just saying far fewer than 1% of you have any claim on our time. Right. You haven't gone into any way that says like, yeah, we should do the thing that you're asking us to do. Right. And so I don't read this as complaining. Maybe some people are reading it as complaint, but I don't think that that's what it is at all. Right. It's like he's just stating what should you expect from us? And they're doing more than what you should expect. Right. Because they're already doing things for the community, already listening. So anyways.
Give me 1 sec. Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I'll be right back. My dog is trapped.
I thought I heard a little dog woof. I think this makes sense in the sense that like he's definitely he's trying to set the expectation you should have. And I think that's a pretty fair thing to do because I mean, I totally get it. You're using a product, something is not working out. You come to file an issue because you find a bug or you find something. And you feel like, hey, it's the onus is on them to fix it. But the reality is, is it? Are you using it correctly? Have you gone through everything exhaustively? Like, where does the fault actually lie? And is it really their requirement to fix it? And I think it's often easy to come into something like that, not intentionally or not trying to be mean, but it's just like, it's probably more normal unless if you've had the experience being on the other side.
Yes. And I don't think the article isn't saying we would never answer an issue. Or but it's also like, maybe be nice.
Yeah. Don't at me, bro. But we'll still answer some
Think
issues
about not tagging every day and saying any updates or is this project dead or
I think one thing that's really hard as well that I've heard from other open source projects is like there's also just so many contributions that you can get. Like especially if it's a popular project, like you just can't stay on top of everything. Like and so it is kind of hard to balance like you don't want to be annoying and like pinging every day, but then at the same time, it's like, sometimes they just don't see and it just hasn't gotten addressed yet, which probably just means it's not high enough priority in like what needs to get looked at.
All right, we take some time of what we earn, money that could be, e.g., go into our retirement savings, and instead use it to hire people to work on Clojure and the community outreach, some full-time. To be honest, I could use that money in my retirement account, having depleted it to make Clojure in the first place. But I love working with the team on Clojure, and I am proud of the work we do. Alex Miller is extremely attentive to and engaged with Clojure community. He and Stu Holloway and I regularly meet and discuss issues. Alex, at my direction, spends the majority of his time either working on features for the community or assessing patches and bug reports. I spend significant portions of my time designing these features, spec, tool depths, error handling, and more to come. This is the time taken away from earning a living. This is another good point, is that some people, they have to treat their open source project like a startup, but the inversion is they don't have a product at the end that they're selling, right? Like this guy is using his money to build something.
Yeah.
And he can't necessarily work just like you, TJ. If you want to improve NeoVim, unless if you're planning on having another kid, you're not really going to get the time available to just simply be like, I'm going to not do work and work on an open source goodwill feel for the next month, right? It's very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think once again, like this article is about setting expectations, right? It's not like about how to build a successful product, right? So this is just saying like you should recognize what it means to spend a long time on an open source project. And like I'm getting paid, getting paid way lower than like minimum wage, right, for all of my NeoVim stuff that I've ever done, which is fine. Like, but it's just a statement of fact, right? I'm not complaining. I chose to do that voluntarily. I like working on it. I'm having fun. That's great.
Mhm.
And I think this next paragraph really like hits this idea and maybe will like it's good.
Okay. I'll read a couple paragraphs now at this point because I feel like there's not
Yeah.
as the meat was definitely prior, and this is kind of more of like it doesn't feel like there's as many intense statements in one. I am grateful for the contributions of the community. Every Clojure release incorporates many contributions. The vast majority of the user community doesn't contribute and doesn't desire to contribute, and that's fine. Open source is a no strings attached gift, and all participants should recognize it as such. Yeah, I feel
That's the point of the article. Nice.
I'm fine with that take. I think it's a good take.
Yeah.
Plus, you probably wouldn't want everyone from the community contributing anyways. You really just want the people highly motivated enough to do it for free as a gift as well.
And that align with your vision. So
Yeah.
like I just saw someone post something like when you grow a community around an open source project, you can delegate all this management burden. No, you can't. You can't just delegate away the vision of a project and like just say, oh, well, this PR has tests, so it's good, or like it passes lint or something.
Yeah.
No, like not even close. That'd be just like you could just, oh, we don't need anybody with a vision at our company. We just have managers.
The community has vision. Come on now.
Yeah, they have
course.
an amalgamation vision, okay?
Yeah.
You know that image of JavaScript that's just like a pile of like organs and stuff, and it's all stitched together, and there's a head at the top, and it's just like, I'm technically functional. That feels like what a community vision is for effectively any project.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can always do more, but it is serious to claim that the core team is standing in the way of meaningful contributions to Clojure, as opportunities abound in library development, outreach, training, tutorials, documentation, giving talks, tool building, etc. And yes, on patches to core. Did you know that most patches/issues have poor problem statements, no descriptions of the plan, read my code, no consideration of alternatives, no tests, no designs, and are ill-conceived and or broken in some way? Community efforts to triage matter a lot in moving things forward. Thanks to Nicola, Gotti, and many others. The time to re-examine preconceptions. Oh, actually, I do want to talk about this. TJ, how often does that happen in Bash? How often does that happen for you guys where you just get like a quick code dump, low explanation? Does GitHub issues kind of with their like formatting and question style templating, does that help alleviate that problem?
Bash, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, it happens a lot. I'd say that the templating can help, but like more often, or like oftentimes, somebody will still just like they'll still just enter in like a couple sentences in the first one and leave all of the other ones as like the default values for like the bug report or whatever, or the feature request. So yeah, that happens a lot. I would also say I'd say it's more rare that we get PRs that include tests. It helps a lot when they do include some tests, even if they're just like, hey, this one thing that I depend on wasn't tested, so I added a test for it. That's also helpful. Yeah, we definitely get that a lot. I have a specific GitHub project specifically just for like managing like, okay, this needs more info. This needs to be reviewed, and then of course ends up often needing more stuff on it. And then this one's like actually seems good to go, but like, is it something that we'd actually want to merge or whatever? It's damn technically functional. This is really good.
This is the meme.
Yeah, I'll also just add that, like, once again, this is about expectations, right? So you submit a bad patch, the expectation is maintainers will work with you to make it good. That's not a good expectation. The expectation should be, I submitted this, we'll see what happens. Right? Like, that's the, like, preconception, right? That they're trying to, like, I think that he's bringing up is like, hey, you submit these things and then you're upset that we don't merge them. Well, it was bad. And
Yeah.
you can't expect someone to then make it good. That's not a fair expectation. Now, sometimes it happens. It happened to me for NeoVim. My first PR submitted to NeoVim was bad. I didn't know what I was doing. But you know what? I was nice and I asked lots of questions that were good that I couldn't find just in the docs. And I like
And
added
you
more
read the docs
tests.
too.
I read the docs a lot. And so there's like, you can encourage this reciprocal relationship as someone who's coming to an open source project, as well as someone who's maintaining one, if that's what you want. But that's the thing. Not everybody wants to do that. Some people just want to publish a project. And like some people only want to publish like 60% done projects and leave them there forever, like Prime, right?
Like me.
And then just make Polar Mutex, clean them up, you know? So it's like, that's okay. Open source is a free gift to everyone.
Except for Polar Mutex. It's a free burden.
Except for Polar Mutex. It's just a burden. Exactly.
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much truth there. That's why I've been stating lately that I do public source and not open source. Like when I put out my dot files, I just don't accept changes because I don't want your changes in my
Still
dot
can't
files.
believe people
Yeah,
submit
yeah.
changes to your dot files. That one always cracks me up. Like I get it for all the other ones, but like, actually, Prime, I think your startup time could probably be improved by they're like, you're really missing out on this prompt.
I currently have 17 pull requests in my dot files.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna send
That's
some too.
hilarious.
I'm not like dissing on any
You just
of them.
got 45.
Yeah.
I just want, like it's just mine. Like I really like this idea of public source. Like I'm fine letting you see what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally okay with that. But I really don't want to build a community around my dot files.
Mm-hmm.
They're just mine. They're personal for a reason. Are they incomplete in some areas? Does some things make me upset? Absolutely. But, like if you were to make a project like Clojure, you have to necessarily do a community. It's a little bit different, right? It's a touch different. So I can see these things. All right, let's finish.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I think part of the reason why a lot of people expect this is that they're hoping that by creating a PR, they can get some valuable feedback from more experienced developers than they are. Like they want that feedback. So one tip that I would give, and then I have a question for you guys. One tip that I would give is try and do a code review on your own PR. So like bring out the books, bring out the docs, bring out everything, and try and like, be really nitpicky about things that you could do better. Okay, is this could I write the statement better? Is this idiomatic? Like whatever. So try and do your own code review. And then for you guys, if you don't think that it's an effective way to get feedback from more experienced developers by creating a PR on some random open source project, how would you go about getting feedback on your code when you're maybe out of school or self-teaching or whatever?
Prime?
I do have some thoughts on this one. So I love that idea, right? It sounds really good on paper. And I think it does sound really, really nice. One, obviously make that communication. Like if you're going to go about that route, you should probably do some sort of level of communication, right? When you file an issue, you can say, hey, I'd love to tackle this. Would you mind guiding me if I make a PR, if I do these things, right? You make your expectations met up front. It'd give people that way when you do make the PR, they're like, oh yeah, I did say I'd help them out here. Let me, and then all of a sudden, boom, it looks a little bit nicer. So I'm totally fine with that approach. The problem is that getting someone else to guide you either technically or in soft skills or anything like that, you're really asking for a coach or a mentor. And that's a hard burden to put on any individual. And so it really has to be pretty scoped and very specific. And I would honestly go for a little bit of advice. Anytime I attempt to make a PR on any open source thing, I first say, hey, do you mind if I tackle this problem?
Yeah.
And just give them the okay, yeah, because if they know that I'm coming in with no context, it means that whatever I submit is going to be bad. It's just like by the very nature of it, it's not going to be good. I have no context on your project. I don't know what's good or bad. Right now, I just jumped onto a new project at work, and nobody makes PRs but me because I just have no context. It's been going on for months, and so I just miss a ton of stuff. So I'm like, okay, why don't we do this? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So I have to gain it kind of like in the rear view mirror, and I think that that's totally okay. That's my thought.
Teach?
Yeah, I would say very similar lines to like what Prime has said. One, you want to find a project that has some guidelines for contributing. because that means they actually want contributors, right? So like that you can look at the project. Do they have a contributing.md, or do they have like some getting started on contributing thing on their website? Like that's them saying, hey, like my expectation is that I would like someone to come work on this with us. And then you can say, cool, that's also the thing I'm looking for. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of like stage 1, and stage 2 is you should actually read those. So like all the way top to bottom, maybe more than once
Left to
if
right.
you're new.
All
Left
of
to
it.
right usually, unless
right
it's
to
a
left.
RTL
Yep.
language.
Yeah.
Then that's also cool. Then you should do it RTL. But you should actually like read the whole thing. And I cannot impress upon people how much of a difference in response you will get if it's clear when you say, I tried this and this from the contributing thing and it didn't work for me, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to issue, broken, fix, thing, or something like this, right? So I think like those first 2 steps are really important. And then if it's your first time contributing or whatever, you probably want to like, especially if you're very new, you should just start off with, I'm very new.
Yeah.
Like set their expectations so they know.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
We've all
really
been
good.
there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
me. I just said, I'm new at this. I don't understand Git. I don't know what's happening, and then they just like, but I was upfront about it and super nice and trying to like, I was just like a dumb college kid I didn't even know what open source was. This is my first PR for NeoVim and stuff. Like I literally knew so little. But if you're just nice and you read, you're way, way, way more likely to get some like actually good feedback. And then the last piece of advice is after you've done those things, then you should also look at the responses that people write you and take them in the best way possible, right?
Yes.
So we could go and link, like I could probably go find my original PR that I did. And like we had this guy who was my favorite person when he reviewed my PRs. He was like this really straight-laced Russian dude who never said anything nice. Like he wasn't
I
mean,
love that.
right? But he was just like, this needs to get fixed and this needs to fix this, right? This kind of thing, right? And like I loved when he reviewed my PRs because he was way better at coding than me.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, man, he really never says like compliments to me about this, right? He just says the things that I need to fix so that we can merge. I just said, sweet, here's a bunch of ways that I can get better. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be able to try and like look at the feedback wherever possible, assuming you're doing all these other things, and take it in the best way that you can, as opposed to saying, oh, this, like the expectation is that I want them to be really nice to me and take extra time of their day to point out like nice things or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like maybe that's what you really want, but then that's not about getting mentored. That's about something else, right? And so
Yeah,
then you should
yeah.
think about what you're trying to do. So that would be sort of my like guideline for how to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also really like when someone is really nitpicky and when they are like, yeah, they just like, just tell me what's wrong. It's okay. No news is good news in my books. If they're saying, they didn't tell me it was wrong, so it must be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, okay.
Mhm.
One thing that while you guys were talking came to mind as well, if you're looking for mentorship on maybe an open source project or something like that, or just in general, if there's something, maybe if there's a project that you're really interested in, ideally a smaller one so that it's, a little more contained, a little less busy all the time, is that if there's one activity that they hate doing and you're like, hey, listen, I'm really looking to learn, I'll do this for you. I'll take on, like, maybe if it's documentation or it's whatever, like just ways, even as a newbie, you are the best at writing, I think, documentation and making the code comments or whatever, like the Go doc more readable, making your API easier to understand, whatever. You're a great person for that as a noob. And you can kind of exchange make an offering for ways that you can add value with your current skill set and ways that you're hoping to kind of get back from them, which is improving your code generally.
That's fair trade.
Yeah.
I could see a lot of people doing that. And plus, they also have Discords, things you can join where you can start chatting with some of the more regulars. And thus, you also just siphon off a bunch of things. You can follow PRs. There's definitely a lot of things that you can also try to gain from it, right? Like if you look at a PR, then someone says, hey, you need to fix this. You could try to figure out why they said that and then what the solution was, and you can follow along too. There's a lot of ways to even, in some sense. I forget. I don't have the right English term for whatever reason, but get it through osmosis. There you go. Like kind of like osmosis. That might be
100%.
That's
Yeah.
potentially
Don't
kind of
underestimate immersion.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you can simulate immersion, you don't necessarily need a one-on-one mentor, but just like if there's someone that's teaching these concepts, like just to try and absorb all that.
All right. Let me finish off
I'm
this
just
article.
wondering, before we finish it off, like Prime, if we asked you to summarize everything we said, would you be able to, or would you only say chirut back? Because I feel like I could tell you were like, you were getting cheruted by chat right now.
I'm getting cheruted super hard right now. But I could do it. But
Proceed.
look at this. You guys see what I have to deal with? No, but this has actually been very, very good. Okay, jokes aside, this has been very good, and I think a lot of people could benefit from this. And even, I mean, just it's a good thing to remind yourself to do, right? I think sometimes it's easy to kind of run in a little too quick. Take a step back, really kind of formulate even all of your expectations and everything, and then go forward. All right, let me read this. We'll finish this off. The time to re-examine preconceptions about open source is right now. Moral erosion amongst creators is a real thing, or morale erosion amongst creators is a real thing. Moral erosion, they're becoming degenerates.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, have you seen Prime's Twitch chat?
It's degeneracy at its finest. Your preconceptions and how you act upon them are your responsibility and yours alone. I'm not going to answer for them or to them. If the way Clojure works isn't for you, a process which produced Clojure in the first place, paradoxically, so be it. I'm sure you know better about the one true way to write software, but kindly don't burn the community down on your way out with self-serving proclamations. Yes, everyone is entitled to an opinion, but tragedy of the commons and all that. Great take. I encourage everyone gnashing their teeth with negativity at what they think they can't instead pick something positive to say they can do. Sorry, let me reread that. I messed that one up. I encourage everyone gnashing their teeth.
You almost made it.
I know, I'm so close. I'm so close.
So close.
I encourage everyone gnashing their teeth with negativity at what they think they can't do. Instead, pick something positive they can do and do it. Beautiful line right there. Rich.
Yeah.
Nice.
P.S.
Good
That's so
life
rich.
advice.
This is just, you just do this on Twitter. Your life will become a lot better if you just do that.
Or just don't go on Twitter.
Yeah, or just don't go on Twitter.
less
That also
angry.
will dramatically improve your life.
Yeah.
Let's see. Rich. All right. P.S. My partners and coworkers at Cognitech were not consulted regarding this message. I am certain they would have dissuaded me. These opinions are mine alone. Awesome. PSA or postscriptum. I think the vast majority of people in the Clojure community are wonderful and positive. If you don't recognize yourself in the message above, it's not for/about you.
Nice.
This is great. I think, even no matter how, it's kind of like, I know I bring this analogy up a lot because I feel like it's one of the world's greatest life lessons, but golf is extremely technically hard. And it's a skill in which you forget to do the fundamental thing over and over again. You should be told, and you should tell yourself every day to keep your head steady and down, right? Don't look at the ball. I know you want to, and after you get really good at it, in 1 week you'll be looking at the ball before you're even swinging and throwing everything else off. And so it's like there's like 1,000 of these little rules, and no matter how many times I'll do open source, this is something that's even good for me, for TJ, I think for anyone just to reread and just, reorient yourself and go, okay, yeah, I should do all these things before I start making these assumptions. I should make all these decisions earlier on. If I want mentorship, I should be going about it in a way that's healthy, both for the mentor and for me, the mentee. Personal thought on this one.
Another life lesson from golf that I've learned is it's similar to learning, where like the more relaxed you are, the more effective you are. Because I've noticed, like with golfing, if you are too tense, like you can't hit the ball. But if as soon as you're like nice and relaxed, it's like you get the perfect stroke.
I know it's, for those that have never had the privilege, I grew up super poor. So all I ever wanted to do, I literally would sit in my backyard with a baseball bat and tennis balls, and I'd play golf and set up my own thing. I always wanted to play golf as a kid.
Yeah, that's so good.
Never got the chance until 35 years old is when I did my first real golfing. And so absolutely love it. And the amount of different life things I can associate with it is just out of this world. It's just weird how much it's literally, it's the perfect representation of how flawed we are as people. because it's a sport of extreme precision, and I am extremely imprecise, and I forget that I am every single day.
My favorite one is like, so Kayleen, my wife, like you wouldn't understand chat.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
But like
A
I
girl?
won't be on
A real one?
on Discord. My wife, a real one. Like she didn't grow up golfing or anything, right? But like we've gone, a decent amount of time since we've been married. Chat, you wouldn't understand. And so the funny thing I notice all the time for golf, it like applies to this as well, is like I tell her a bunch of things that I know are correct about golf, and then I don't do them. Like, oh, you don't swing too
totally.
hard. You don't need to crush it. And so then I'm walking up and I'm like, oh,
I'm gonna crush it.
I'm gonna show her how cool I am. Watch me just absolutely just smash this, and then like slice into the water, blah blah, etc. Right? That's like exactly the same kind of situation here where you're thinking, oh, I know open source expectations. I don't need to worry about that. And then you go into a project, and you're like, why doesn't this work? Hey, is anyone gonna fix my issue? Hey, why won't you accept my view? Same.
When
Same
is 05
situation.
coming out?
When's 05 coming out? Hey, if you don't swing too hard, it's actually better. Come on.
Facts of life.
Oh man.
All right, hey, thanks for joining
Yes.
us, everybody. Bash, where can people find you at?
Well, I'm co-working right now, so I guess
You
here
can go over to her
on
stream,
Twitch.
Bash Bunny.
Yeah, you can actually just leave this. No, I'm just kidding. Stay with Prime, hang out with Prime. But you can find me. I don't know. I guess here, Twitter, YouTube, whatever.
All right,
Just search for Bash Bunny, and you'll find me.
there you go. There's at least the link minimally in Twitch. I can't shout you out for another 21 minutes and 59 seconds, so I can't do
Wow.
that. I would shout out Tej, but well, I mean,
I'm a sus user right now.
he's been yelling about himself for the last year and a half, so I think we.
I'm a sus user. Yeah. Like, look at me. Hello? I'm gonna
I'd
show
rather
up.
actually in the same room right now.
Yeah,
They actually live together.
Mod comments. Suspicious user.
this is TJ is at my house right now.
The plus side though, like I said earlier, is like now it highlights every time. Like if I was gonna talk about a stream, like if I was a streamer,
Yeah,
it would show. It like puts a box around it if I were to type something.
That's so
Like
good.
if I were to type about a stream, it's gonna put a whole box around it in Prime's chat. It highlights it.
That's really good.
Look at that. Everybody can make sure they see it. So when I have my chat on screen, it's very obvious for all people.
It's very obvious what I type.
All right, hey.
Also, Bash, if you missed it, you should watch this clip that just showed up in Prime chat as well.
Uh-oh.
That's all. If you're on YouTube, sucks for you. You should have been on Twitch.
Yeah,
name
that's rough.
is the Charutagen.